are good, good. I want to tell you about a lovely elderly couple who were celebrating their wedding anniversary. 50 years married. So they decided they would pop out to their favourite restaurant. And so they went to McDonald's. And went up to the counter and they got themselves a single meal, a burger and fries and a juice. And they went and sat down at the table. And the old man very carefully cut the burger in two. He counted out the chips so that they were absolutely equal. And he put one lot in front of his wife and the other lot in front of himself. There was an old man watching, and he was a wee bit concerned about this. So he went up to the table and he said, "Excuse me, but do you mind? I would really love to buy you another meal so that your wife has got something to eat as well. It's substantial." And the old man says, "Listen, don't worry about it. We've been married 50 years and we share everything." So the old man went and sat down. The young man went and sat down. The old man is tucking into his burger and some of his fries, and the young man notices that the old lady is eating nothing. She hasn't touched the food that's in front of her. And so the young man goes right back up again, and he goes to the lady this time. "Listen, please, excuse me, but I just want to help you. Can I not buy you another meal so you can eat yourself?" "No, son, it's okay. My husband and I have been married for 50 years. We share everything." The old man kept on eating, finished off his burger, his allocation of the fries, and dabbed his face with his napkin. His wife still hadn't touched a thing. And so this young man goes back over a third time and says, "Please, please, I want to help you, I want to encourage you. Can I not go and buy you another meal so you've got something to eat that's warm and tasty?" And the woman goes, "Listen, I'm really sorry, son. Thank you for your concern. But you need to understand that my husband and I have been married all these years, and we share everything, even the teeth." That took some of you a moment or two there, didn't it? So it did. Now, Jesus doesn't, some of you are just getting that now. Jesus doesn't want to share his teeth with you. But he would be interested in eating with you. And the question today is, would Jesus eat with me? And I could give you a very simple answer and say yes and just sit down and that's my job done. But I suspect you want a little bit more than that. Would Jesus eat with me? Now, I don't know how you'd answer that question. If you've got a church connection, and maybe you would say, I guess he would. Or maybe you'd think to yourself, actually, am I good enough? Have I done enough? Maybe if you've got no church connection, you might think to yourself, why would he eat with me? Nobody else eats with me. I'm shunned by others. I'm different. Or maybe you think to yourself, I'm not that good a person. Why would he eat with me? Well, I want to say to you today that Jesus would indeed eat with you. You better believe it. How do I know? Because actually, at the end of the Bible, he says, in the book of Revelation, it says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. And if anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with them, they with me." Jesus wants to eat with you. How can I be sure he would eat with just about anybody? Well, the Bible tells me about the stories. So let me tell you one or two of them very quickly, just to illustrate my point today. Would Jesus eat with you? Yes, he would. In John's Gospel, the very first miracle that Jesus ever did, it's written down, he was invited to a meal. In fact, he was invited to a wedding. And we don't know who else was at his wedding, but his mum was clearly there, because they ran out of wine, and his mum came up and gave him a wee nudge and said, "Jesus, can you not help them out?" And Jesus was like, "Well, that's not really why I'm here." But his mum pestered him, so he did. And he got the servants to go away, and they had water jars in those days, big water jars about this size. And he told the servants to go and fill them up with water. And he says, "Once you've filled them up with water, I want you to take a glass, and I want you to dip it into the water, and I want you to take that glass to the master of the banquet." And that's what they did. And when the master of the banquet tasted what was in that glass, he discovered it was the finest wine. Not just the run-of-the-mill wine, not the wine that you got at the end of a meal, because actually at weddings what they did is they gave you the very best wine at the start. You got your Chateau de Pape, for those of you who are into red wine like I am, you got your Chateau de Pape at the start, and then as you went on you got Aldi's own special brand. At the end, your watered down stuff. Jesus gave them the finest wine at the end. He wanted to help people and be around people. Well, you go to Luke's Gospel, and there was a tax collector in a tax booth, And I don't know what you know about tax collectors, if you know anything about the inland revenue, you're too young to pay your taxes yet. I pay my taxes, I'm never very keen on the tax man. Back then, they really hated the tax people. Levi was a tax collector. He was the enemy of the people. Socially, politically, religiously unacceptable to the Jews of the day. And yet Jesus was walking up to him and says, Levi, come follow me. And Levi, it says, get out of his tax booth, just stopped his work and went after Jesus. And do you know the first thing that Levi did? He had a banquet at his house for Jesus. Party was at Levi's. And Levi didn't have very many friends because he was socially unacceptable to everybody else. Everybody hated him, apart from his tax collector buddies. So he invited all of them round for dinner with Jesus, and Jesus sat and ate with them. And the religious leaders of the day came round and moaned at Jesus' followers and said, what is he doing? And Jesus said, listen, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. Jesus was interested in those people that others looked down upon, that others wanted nothing to do with. Would Jesus eat with me? Yes, he would. He ate with all of them. Or another tax collector, at the end of his life, a wee fella called Zacchaeus, and he was a wee fella, by the way, that's what it tells us. He was small, and he couldn't see over the crowds to see Jesus. He couldn't push his way through them because they took one look and went, give him a kick to the side. Zacchaeus ran on ahead, climbed up a tree. He wanted just to see Jesus. Jesus knew exactly who he was and where he was. And when he got to that spot, he looked up and he said, Zacchaeus, come on down. I'm coming to your house for my dinner tonight. And he went to Zacchaeus and chatted with him. And again, the people of the day looked around and they mumbled and they groaned and they complained at Jesus, what are you doing? And Jesus said, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save what was lost. And you think, wow. There's other times. He was at the house of some of the religious leaders. And he knew that all they wanted to do was mock him and make fun of him. They wanted to question him and try and catch him out. But he went because he was interested in spending time with people. And that day a woman came in. And it tells us in the Bible that she was a sinful woman. Now, we've got no idea what that means. Some folk think she was maybe a prostitute. Or whatever it was, she had a bad rep. And everybody knew it. And she sat down and she brought a jar of perfume with her. And she sat down on the floor at Jesus' feet. And she cried over his feet. She dried his feet with her hair and kissed him. And then poured the perfume. And the people in that room, the religious leaders, what are you doing? And you have no idea who this is. And again, Jesus praised her and said what a great thing she had done. He was interested in her. Talking of women, another woman at a well one day. It was the middle of the day. Jesus' followers had gone to get food somewhere else. And he's standing there, and this woman comes. And he asks her for some help and talks to her. And this is where you need to understand what it is about the middle of the day. It's roasting hot. Most people went for water in the morning when it was still cool. It was a social event. They walked and they talked, they chatted, they gossiped, they caught up. Nobody went in the middle of the day but this woman. Because she didn't want the sniggers and sneers of the other people because of her reputation. She had been married 5 times. She was going out with another man who wasn't even her husband. And everybody would want to make fun of her and question her. Jesus, he sat down with her. He talked to her. He shared with her. In fact, she went back to her friends and said, come and meet someone who told me everything I ever did. And there are so many other occasions where Jesus sat down and ate with people. His own followers, right at the end of his life, he sat down to share a last meal with them. A ragtag bunch of people that you wouldn't normally put together in a room, and yet he had spent 3 years with them. And one of them was going to betray him. One of them was going to hand him over to be killed. And still he invited them for dinner. And he sat down and he ate with them. Would Jesus eat with me? You better believe he would. We've seen in just some of these how he spent time with the lost and the lonely, the outcast and the stranger, his friends, his enemies, those who loved him and those who wanted to betray him. He invited himself to the home of a despised tax collector. He went to a banquet with those that society rejected. He welcomed the attention of a woman written off by others. Jesus is interested in people. He welcomes people to his table. And that means he wants to invite you as well. The Christian Union stand ready to welcome you too. They've invited you to this lunch bar today, giving you a little bit of food. Hopefully it tastes okay. Come back to some of the other events because they want you there as well. Whoever you are today, I just simply want to echo the words I shared at the start from the Bible. Jesus says, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with him and he with me. Jesus is ready to welcome you, whoever you are, whatever your background. And the question is, will you go and eat with him? Will Jesus eat with me? You better believe it. And in case you want something to talk about, maybe just around your tables, just have a wee think to yourself. Who would I eat with? What prejudices do I have? Would I eat with Jesus? And what's stopping me from learning more about him? Maybe a few things just to chat about as you finish your lunch, or if you're really bored with my stuff, chat about something else.